This is TWiT.
Oracle versus Google, the case that just never ends. How long has this been going on? Feels like...
How long is this show?
How long's Android?
Was it just a straight line?
It's been forever. This will be the last time. This will be the last time. This will be the... 10 years ago, Oracle first sued Google. The issue was Oracle owns Java. Android is built on Java. Oracle says, we never licensed Java to you. In the 10 years, there have been 3 trials, 2 appeals, millions spent on a parade of, I'm reading for The Verge, seasoned litigators, expert witnesses, and bizarre trial exhibits intended to explain programming to non-technical juries. It may all have ended this morning. Of course, they no longer, it's a teleconference. You don't go in person to the Supreme Court, but the oral arguments were today. Decisions usually take a few months, so it's not going to be decided today. But it's really interesting to know what this is all about. At issue is not the fact that Google used Java. They didn't. They use the Java API. In fact, 37 specific APIs that are at issue in the lawsuit. Oracle says we own a piece of Android, billions of dollars worth of Android, because you used not Java, but our API. The issue is, can an API be copyrighted? Lower courts have ruled that yes, an API can be copyrighted. There are issues because, after all, Oracle, among other things, copies Amazon's API, their S3 API, for Oracle's own database offerings online.
Lovely.
Oracle says, "Oh no, that's different." Let me get Mike Masnick's article because he talks about this. Mike has so many good stories. We could just make this the Mike Masnick Tech Dirt show, honestly. Let me see if I can find this story. It's buried now because he's talking about so much other stuff. Good Lord. I might have to go back to Google and search for it. I think I do. Let's see.
Can we get Mike back on the show with
Yes.
Stacey at the same time?
Yes.
Great. He's just great.
Oh, he's never been here with Stacey.
Right.
Mike Masnick?
Yeah.
He's so
Oh,
smart.
didn't he sub for you?
I think he subs for me a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met Mike, and where were
was
we?
great
We
on
had
the
this
show.
I love your work. I love your work. I love
Oh,
your work.
that's
You're
nice.
so smart.
Oh, that's nice.
No, you're so smart. It was mostly me just telling him he's smart. But he was gracious and did say he thought I was smart, which was nice.
Well, you're both smart. So there.
I'm like, he's
So
very smart
there.
about things I am not smart about.
Of course, I didn't bookmark
And I don't
this
really want to
story.
be smart.
I, however, am a reductionist. 2 of them are smart.
Oh my gosh, I'm never going to live it down. Oh, Jeff. That was careless use of the English language.
It was a 3rd grade moment in scolding for that, yes.
Oh, come on. So
No,
here's
I
the
was
story.
saying,
This
it
was
like
from,
I was like a 3rd grade
This
teacher.
was from
You find it?
October
We're
1st.
trying to vamp for you, Leo, till you find the thing.
Oracle is wrong about having permission to re-implement Amazon's API, but they shouldn't need it. Apparently, it has to do with bacon, and it's like too complicated.
Oh, God.
Well, an API is, if Oracle was really pissed, they could change the APIs and break it.
But no, it
would
doesn't.
break it for everybody.
At this, yeah.
Is Google still using it, or did they long ago get rid of it?
That's a good question. I think they probably have proactively
I would imagine.
moved on. Maybe that was the point of Dalvik. Google says...
Dalvik, how long ago was that?
Yeah, Google says that there's 11,500 codes encompassing these 37 Java APIs. Google says they were written in a clean room, which is how you do it, right? You say, we need this code to be given this input and to come out with this output, but you figure out how to do it. It's called reverse engineering. It's happened. That's how the PC marketplace started. Reverse engineering the original PC BIOS with the Compaq.
That's how a lot of tech is done.
A lot
today.
of tech. Yeah. And by the way, Google and Sun, which owned Java at the time, were in negotiations. Those negotiations failed. Oracle bought Sun in 2010. And I remember talking to Jonathan Schwartz, who was the CEO of Sun at the time. He was on a triangulation, and he said the Oracle lawyers showed up and were completely uninterested in us until we mentioned the patents on Java. And then he said they started rubbing their hands with glee. You could make the argument, I think Jonathan was making the argument, the only reason Oracle bought Sun is so that they could go after Google and other companies. Let's see. Oracle is not asserting that the APIs are the same. They are saying that they violate copyright because they have the same function. And in fact, if you write code for the Java Standard Edition, it won't necessarily run on Android, but this helps. So the first run at the lawsuit resulted in a bifurcated trial in 2012, a trial for the patent claims and a trial for the patent claims. The patent trial, the jury ruled in Google's favor. In the copyright trial over APIs, the judge ruled, and the question that Google came down to was, is it fair use to use the API? So really, fair use is on trial. That jury hung. Remember, this is the judge who wrote a Java root to taught himself Java so that he could be the judge of this trial. He ruled that the code was not covered by copyright. However, the federal court in 2014 overturned that. Another jury trial was convened 2 years later. The jury once again ruled for Google. 2 years later, 2018, the federal circuit court ruled that the jury verdict had to be set aside in favor of Oracle because the evidence clearly indicated no fair use determination could be reached. Then it went to the Supreme Court, which I think sent it back down to the lower court. I've lost track at this point. But this is a big deal because it could really affect the software industry in general. The question of whether Java APIs could be covered by copyright really affects all APIs and whether they are copyrighted and copyrightable. And there are so many examples of APIs being duplicated. As I said, Oracle's even doing that right now with Amazon's S3. They say because it's open source, we can do that. We'll see. We'll see.
Loophole.
So
just a little loophole.
This is The Verge writing. Let me see who wrote this because it's well written. I'll give the author credit. It's Sarah Jong. She's very good.
Oh, yeah,
she's very good.
Yes.
She says the decade-long grudge match between Google and Oracle is not entirely rational. Google's re-implementation of the Java APIs is part of a long tradition of iteration that was mostly taken for granted until now. Products like Oracle's own MySQL were created as an iteration, aka homage, to IBM's SQL. So, to put things roughly, coding is the process of speaking to the machine. Very few people who develop software in this day and age actually speak directly to the machine. Software exists in layers upon layers, a game of whispers that eventually reaches the bare metal of the computer. New languages derived from old, new libraries built on existing ones, dependencies stacked on top of one another like a game of Jenga that is about to end at any moment. And Google versus Oracle is a case that is happening at one of the lowest levels of an ongoing game of Jenga. And you know what happens when you pull out a little piece of wood at the lowest level of a game of Jenga.
How much money is at stake in this? Do we have any idea?
Billions. Because they want a stake in Android. They claim, Oracle claims, no, we should get a piece of Android for eternity. So billions.
And Oracle bought Sleepy Cat to get the MySQL stuff. The reason they bought it was so they could actually hobble open source
That's a good point.
It's very similar to what Jonathan Schwartz
want
was
to
saying.
regulate something. Regulate that behavior.
Yeah.
Man, Oracle is... Dude, they own TikTok now. They got it. Donald Trump gave it to a man, right?
Yep.
That's right.
A lot of people are concerned in the open source community because that's one of the things you do in open source. Something like Wine, which allows Windows software to run on Linux, is essentially, it's not an emulator. That's what it stands for. Wine is not an emulator. It basically copies the API and so when you make an API call that you think is to Microsoft Windows, the Linux box handles it properly because it has the API, independently developed compatible API. And so I could give you example after example in open source and in closed source.
Does Wine run worth a dang these days?
Yeah, Ryan's pretty good. It gets better all the time.
It drove me nuts years ago.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot better than it used to be. Although I think it maybe its time has come and gone since there's so much good software.
Right.
You don't really need to use Microsoft Office on Linux anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
Court observers listening this morning found that while the justices seemed to side with Oracle on the copyright arguments, they were deferential to the arguments presented by Microsoft, who had taken Google's side in this case because they're in a similar situation. There was a good story about how Google and Oracle both have generated huge numbers of amicus briefs. This is how you lobby the Supreme Court. In theory, these briefs are not associated with the plaintiffs. They're just by people who are experts, but it turns out many of these experts work for either Oracle or Google in one way or the other. Microsoft argued in an amicus brief that ruling in Oracle's favor could upend the software industry. I'd agree with that. Justice Gorsuch was also seen to focus heavily on the Seventh Amendment arguments and whether the federal district's ruling. Oh boy, this is complicated. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm putting you to sleep.
Anytime soon, though.
Well, it will in a couple of months. This is it, right? Unless
there's nowhere to go after.
There's nowhere to go unless
you call Congress.
They send it back, right? They could do that, right?
They could.
I got a hunch.
They've done that once before.
Keep going.
Nope, I think it's done. But
thank God,
it could be done in a way that we're not too happy about.
Those lawyers still want to get paid. They've been hurting during the pandemic, so stretch it out.
CNBC's Tucker Higgins. Things got technical at the Supreme Court as the justices heard arguments this morning in a blockbuster copyright dispute. At the end of the hour-and-a-half arguments, Justice Stephen Breyer, who at one point read aloud some Java code, appeared to be the only sure vote for Google. Several other of the justices, including Chief Justice Roberts, said they were sympathetic to Oracle's copyright claim, even as they appeared to reluctant to rule in its favor. So it's unknown. It's unknown. Brett Kavanaugh and Samuel Alito noted that Google's allies had warned the sky will fall if Oracle won. Roberts said, "We're told if we agree with Oracle, we will ruin the tech industry in the United States." Brett Kavanaugh said, "I'm not aware the sky has fallen in the last 5 or 6 years, despite Google losing its first battle in 2014.
We need Jim Jordan to come in here and start yelling about it, too. That would set this off.
So sometimes you try to read the tea leaves by hear like the questions the justices ask, but it sounds like, as is often the case, it's impossible to tell. So
this is one of those things. I'm like, God, just let it be over. Like,
well, but I honestly think it would be a disaster if they ruled in Oracle's favor. It would be a disaster. It would be really bad for Oracle.
It would be
others.
terrible.
Yeah.
But dang.
Dang.